look, what I like to say is if you vote for a Democrat, right now, you're voting for Goldman Sachs because nobody in Congress is opposing Nancy Pelosi. We all know Nancy Pelosi serves the interest of the oligarchs and the establishment in Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs has won, just like Chris Hedges says and Thomas Frank says, that Goldman Sachs has won every election since 1980. There's no getting around that. So when you're voting for a Democrat, you're voting for Goldman Sachs, and that's just the way it is. And I know that's hard for people to understand. Wait a minute. If I vote for a Justice Democrat, they say they're against all that stuff, but they vote for it. So their rhetoric does not match up with their actions. They're not fighting for you. They're never going to cross Nancy Pelosi. And that's the big problem. So if you go along with Nancy Pelosi, who are you going along with? You're going along with Goldman Sachs, the military industrial complex, big pharma, and the oil companies, and Google and Silicon Valley. So that's who the real oligarchs are. That's who you can't cross. And that's why the squad aren't allowed to cross those people, because they won't get their book deals. They won't get their speaking fees, and they won't be in Congress for 5 years. So they get lifetime pension, lifetime health care. That's so the squad and the Justice Democrats are a bunch of self-interested, self-dealers who don't care about what they give lip service to. They care about their own careers, and nothing has been made more manifest than this last year. They have how often have they used their leverage? 0 fucking times. And the only time they ever coordinated their vote was to make sure that the police got $2 billion more in funding. That's the only time they coordinated their vote. So if you need more evidence that they're 100% corrupt, and when I say corrupt, I mean they're acting dishonestly in their own interest. That's the definition of corrupt, not what Kyle Kulinski says. Kyle Kulinski says words matter, and the definition of corruption, he just makes up a definition. He just literally pulls a definition out of his ass about what corruption is. And I had to show it on my show, the definition from Webster's dictionary. And I think he stopped saying that stupid shit since then, but maybe not.
Yeah, you are on point, because I thought we were supposed to be a policy-based movement. And I always say, because I bought into the strategy of the Justice Democrats at first. I was supportive of AOC in her race. And I remember you had AOC on your show at the beginning, Bernie Sanders campaign. But as things went on and as they continued to vote, the squad and these progressive politicians are actually very politically calculating. They are not as incompetent as a lot of people give them credit, because they coordinate their vote in a way where they will have heroes sometimes and then villains. Like, why would you do that? But then the person who's the villain, the next vote, they can be the good guy. And then the people who made the good vote, then they can have the shady decision. So you point out.
You saw even when they did the sleep-in or whatever that was at the Capitol for 5 days. And you saw that when they were declaring victory, someone asked them a question: what are you going to do about the other 10% who aren't covered by this eviction moratorium? That's 1.1 million people. And they put their fingers in their hair and turned the music up and started dancing. So I don't know what that tells you, but that tells me that they're not sincere, that this was a coordinated stunt with the establishment, because they knew the Supreme Court would knock this down, and they used it as a fundraiser. And at the same time they were saying that, the Democratic Party was taking millions of dollars from the real estate industry. So we predicted on our show that the Supreme Court would knock this down, and that what they needed to do was make sure Congress came back in session, which is what they pretended they were really there for. And they never happened. So now why aren't they sleeping back out there? Because that eviction moratorium got taken away. Why aren't they sleeping on the steps of the Capitol to make sure Nancy Pelosi reconvenes the House? Because all those people are getting kicked out. Why do you think that is?
You know how many people got so mad at me, because at Fred Hampton Leftists, we was making the same prediction where they was running this victory PR tour. And I was talking about this with Max Blumenthal, who was actually calling them out at the steps. You have war criminals like Adam Schiff there doing photo ops with you people. They were responsible for the mess we are in. And Max Blumenthal was calling them out because he said the amount of money that you want to give to Israel every year can solve the homelessness crisis.
Yes.
So you guys are actually responsible for this. So why is Cori Bush giving these people a photo op? So it actually was a PR stunt from the very beginning. And
yes.
Even when they got the eviction moratorium that Biden approved, we said, like, the fight is not over. Why are you guys going on the victory lap? Franco Analysis was asking them this question. And do you know the wave of hate that this is why I'll turn it back to them? Because they always want to, the people that are always right about these things, they always call us the dumb left because we don't like their politicians. And that's the reason why. But they were the dumb left because they didn't see this coming. We said this was happening. They didn't see it coming. They was caught off guard. And then I was flagging that, and people was like, "Oh, the socialist made Nick. He just celebrating the fact that all these people go homeless." I was like, "No, I was just pointing out the fact that you guys was wrong, and I told you guys to get back to work." We said on our stream when this happened, Cori Bush, why are you celebrating? Get back to work. What are you doing? And people got mad when I said that.
So what I said on my show was, well, because they said, well, our 5-day protest moved mountains. That's a quote from Cori Bush. And I said, well, if a 5-day poorly attended protest, by the way, nobody showed up for the protest. Why do you think that is too? Why do you think they didn't invite people to come down? Why didn't they use their social media to get 100,000 people down there? Why didn't they want, the only people down there were mostly staff and sycophants. Right. So there weren't. So whenever an activist showed up and asked them a question, they turned the music up and we're not going to answer any questions. So that because they weren't real. That wasn't a real protest. That's why. I forgot what I was going to say now.
Yeah, we have activists. Cori Bush is an activist. We have activists that are afraid to talk to other activists.
That's not an activist. That's not an activist. If you don't want to talk to the press and get your message out, because that's the problem activists always have. Nobody will cover us. They're always thirsty for press coverage, and then when someone gives them press coverage, they don't want. They have their handlers getting between them. That's not an activist, and that's not an activist when you won't talk to other activists, but you turn the music on. That's what Hillary Clinton and the establishment oligarchs do. They turn on sound cannons because they don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear you advocating for people. That's exactly what that was. So when she said that we moved mountains with a 5-day poorly attended protest, my question is, why would you ever stop protesting? If you're able to get this with a 5-day poorly attended protest, what could you get for 5 day more with a better attended? You probably get student debt relief. You probably get a living wage. You probably get marijuana rescheduled. You probably get that $300 million that we're spending in Afghanistan every day reinvested back here at home. You could get anything you wanted. Why would you ever stop if you could move mountains with a 5-day poorly attended protest? That reveals the fucking lie that protest was a protest. That was a coordinated stunt with Nancy Pelosi. She was okay with it. The leadership of the Democratic Party was okay with it. So that's not a protest. You're not crossing the establishment or the oligarchs. And it's been manifest because we don't have an eviction moratorium. And where the hell are they now?
I was having a lot of fun with this because a lot of these people, their politics is only following the Justice Democrats in the squad. And what the squad, what they really did, instead of shifting what it means to be socialist to the left, they actually shifted what it means to be a socialist to the right, where you have people that are happy even though we're not canceling rent. There was millions of people that was slipping through the cracks, and they was allowed to go homeless, but we were supposed to be 100% okay with this. And this is a failure of them as leftist leaders. The fact that they're not even willing to challenge the establishment the way we want them to do, because they proved us right. So I was having a lot of fun with this because a lot of people that were defending the squad, they said that our efforts to get them to force the vote, that they were like, oh, you guys want to prop up the Medicare for All March. You guys want them to actually wield their power to actually shut stuff down to get a progressive agenda. They say, oh, you guys are being unrealistic. But then Cori Bush does this stunt, and then they're like, see, this is why you guys should like the squad. Like, no, this proves me right, because we said this is what you should be doing all the time over all these issues. Right. Like, why aren't you helping us organize strikes? Why aren't you showing up to the Medicare for All rallies? Why aren't you actually speaking up against ending the war? You can do the same thing. And because you guys are the most popular politicians, where you guys go, and when you guys do a stunt like this, the media will follow you whether they like it or not, especially if you actually like engage with independent media, because they have this horrible strategy where they're like, okay, we're going to rely on corporate media to tell our story. They don't want to talk to independent media. Now, if you actually use independent media the right way, you can amplify your message. You can shut down corporate media talking points, and we could have your back. But instead, they actually shun that side away, and then they hold the half measure actions, and then we would call them out. The squad defenders get upset at us. We like, there's no end game. You have people at the protest, like Franco, for example. They was like, what's the end game here? Can't ask those questions. You're being mean. That's going against civility politics if you do that. So go ahead, Jimmy.
It's ironic that every time AOC speaks, she talks about how we have to make the ruling class uncomfortable, how we have to make politicians uncomfortable. She even said at the steps of the Capitol that we have to have confrontation. We have to have confrontation, and we have to stop talking nice, and we have to make people uncomfortable. This is what she doesn't realize, that when we do it to her, she says we're being racist, sexist, and violent. So again, just as if you read Listen Liberal, Thomas Frank talks about how they know all the words of activism, they know all the words of leftyism, and they know all the words of democracy. They ought to pay fealty to democracy as they do the bidding of the oligarchs. And that's exactly what the Squad and the Justice Democrats are doing. They have their own dark money fucking super PAC now. They're taking money from George Soros. They're taking money from people who don't even know who it is because it's dark money. So they became the exact thing they were supposed to be fighting against. And now they're propping up the establishment. And when you point that out, they attack activists. They attack people who are pointing out that they're being going along with the establishment, and they get half the left to go along with it. That's what Force the Vote revealed, that people who claim to be on the left aren't really on the left, right? So even people who were for Force the Vote at the beginning, then they got the phone call from the establishment, and they were like, oh, we got it, we can't do it now. Why? Because Jimmy Dore, that's all they got. You saw Brianna Joy Gray's interview, right, with the NBC contract, and all was just about Jimmy Dore. That's all it was. It was nothing else. So those people have MSNBC contracts. Those people like Cenk Uygur take millions and millions of dollars from DNC donors and the establishment, and then they pretend that they're independent media and they're fighting for you. What they're doing is they're the ones keeping you from real activism. They're the ones like Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks and people with MSNBC contract and Ryan Grimm at The Intercept. Could they be more exposed as fucking tools for the establishment? No, they couldn't be. And that's why they're coming after me as hard as they come after me. They're even willing to be anti-science to come after me. We saw that with The Intercept. So it's amazing what's happening. And what we need to have happen now is for people to stop thinking there's someone inside the Democratic Party fighting for them, either party, right? Because there isn't. And what keeps happening is the progressive energy keeps getting redirected into the Democratic Party, where, as Kshama Sawant points out, it meets a graveyard. So we get that progressive energy, and then they get people who are who look like us, right? They get black and brown people and females and all kinds of to play their identity politics to distract you from the fact that they're going right along with the oligarchy and the establishment screwing you, and they're not using their leverage to help you. And what we need to have people realize is that nobody inside the Democratic or the Republican Party is going to help you. And so what is that? But until that happens, we can't have change. Until people who are progressive and activists on the left realize that the Democratic Party is a dead end, that no matter what you think, no matter how, no matter what kind of lip service, no matter how sweet their speech is to you, no matter how much fucking lip service they give you, they are not fighting for you. So stop putting your energy into the Democrat and Republican parties. And what we need to do is look outside those two parties. And until people do that, until they stop donating to the Democratic Party, until they stop voting for the Democratic Party, there will be no change electorally in the United States. And right now, even when you try to do an activism, when you try to get into the streets and do a direct action like we did in 50 different cities with the Medicare for All March, nobody will cover it. Half the left, like the Young Turks, David Dole, Humanist Report, they don't even show up for the fucking thing. And what do? They shit on it. Just like Ryan Grimm at The Intercept did. They shit on people who are advocating in the streets for Medicare for All. That's where we're at. So there is no left in America. And so we got to call these motherfuckers out, because that's all they're there to do, is to stop progress. People like The Intercept, Ryan Grimm, Cenk Uygur, and all the shows that are in his satellite. Those are people who all they're there is just like the Squad, for their own self-aggrandizement, for their own personal interest. They're willing to sell you out for censorship, for the celebrity of politicians. They are never going to fight for you. They're never going to be in the street fighting for you, and they're never going to stick your chin out. They're never going to, like we do here, like you do, like we do at my show, to stand up and call out the establishment and the oligarchs, even when they're wearing the same clothing that we do, when they're pretending to be activists, when they're pretending to fight for Medicare for All. We have to call them out, even when they're pretending to do that. They didn't even show up at that march. 50 different cities. Bernie Sanders wasn't there. None of the Squad was there. Cori Bush showed up to one of the marches But she didn't speak because she didn't agree with the demands. She wasn't on board with Medicare for all protests. So until people realize that the Democratic Party is there to distract you, that the Justice Democrats are there to take your progressive energy and put it in a graveyard inside the Democratic Party, until people realize that, until they stop voting for them, until they stop donating to them, there will be no progress in America. Because Joe Biden's the reason we got Donald Trump. He was in the White House for 8 fucking years with Barack Obama, and they gave us right-wing corporatist policies. They kicked 5.1 million families out of their houses in a similar economic situation. 5.1 million families. They didn't give them help. They didn't give them mortgage relief. They fucking kicked them out of their houses. They gave their houses to the Wall Street, who they just bailed out while they were giving you a right-wing healthcare plan when they had complete filibuster-proof control of the goddamn Congress and the White House. That's what they did. And then they deported more Hispanics than all the presidents combined since 1890. You know that Donald Trump deported less Hispanics, almost by half, than Barack Obama did in his first term? Did you know that? So this idea that you had to vote for Joe Biden or Barack Obama because you care about Mexicans, immigrants, or Hispanics is a complete fucking sham. Donald Trump wasn't as bad for Hispanics as Joe Biden. Joe Biden right now, they've got way more people in cages. No one seems to give a shit about that anymore. You remember when after Trump was elected, they used to go, and Maxine Waters said, confront these people. They would go into restaurants and they would confront the members of the Donald Trump administration. Do you remember that? Well, now it's even worse. Why aren't they doing that with the Biden administration? Do they not care about poor black and brown people who are being kept in cages anymore? The answer is no. They don't fucking care. They only cared when it was a dunk on their political opponent.